Welcome back to another Sins of the Solar Empire 2 video featuring the Vasari. Today we are going to be looking at the Tosurak Raider for the Vasari, specifically the Alliance. This is the second Corvette that we will be analyzing, and this one's unique in the way that it plays and what you'll use it for. I'm learning, guys, so here we go. We got base stats. Starts with, or has 0 durability, starts with 420 shield points, 180 armor points. I believe the unupgraded armor is in the 30s, or it's probably 18, but I screwed that up. Base hull points are 575 with a max speed of 960. The ship only has 2 weapons on it, one being a medium pulse gun with 4 DPS and 200 pierce. That pulse gun has this tiny little reticle here, but unlike the light frigate, it's not a problem for us because of the way that the Raider behaves when it shoots at stuff. And then the second weapon is the light phase missile with 2.7 DPS and 300 pierce. A quick note on some of the weapons here. The cooldown on the medium pulse gun is 3 seconds, and it does 12 damage per shot with 200 pierce. And then the light phase missile has a 18-second cooldown and does 48 damage per round, basically, which is where you get the 2 DPS values. With much higher research completed, so we're talking pulse weapons all the way up to 42%. I only have 2 levels into the warheads, and then has max hull, has self-regen. Actually, I can just go ahead and grab it now the way I've got the game playing. And then all of the research is here except for that final armor strength, and you end up with 5.9 DPS, 200 pierce, and then 3.8 DPS on the phase missiles. This ship is unique for the Vasari faction, and I don't believe there's any other ships that have a similar kind of ship that they use. This ship has something called the pulse resonance, which gives the pulse weapons very specifically 30 damage bonus to any structure that it shoots at. When it shoots at the structure, it does give 600 pierce to this 30 damage. And then with this 30 damage, you receive 3% of the metal and 3% of the crystal that you are shooting at. So if an enemy puts down any sort of structure, you get bonus resources back for shooting with the pulse gun. So some of the things that it is good at, and I did some substantial note taking on what structures you can fight against with these. So if we start with the Advent, the unbuffed laser turret, and give me 1 second, I'll even switch into the Advent faction and then load in a structure. So the beam defense, or not beam, laser defense structure. So if we pop that down, this is the Advent laser defense structure. You'll notice it has 5 different points on it, 5 different heavy laser points on it, with 9.8 DPS and 300 pierce. So that 300 pierce does get through the 0 durability on the Raider, but a unbuffed Raider, so no research in any of the warfare tree, and no research in the Advent laser defense platform, 2 Raiders will kill 1 defense platform. Definitely 1-to-1, the laser platform wins. in a 2 Raiders to 1 platform, the Raiders actually come out on top. It takes about 3 minutes for them to kill it, but they do come out on top. If we do all tier 1 buffs of the Advent, which would be the shield and the laser damage upgrade, and I think that's it. Yeah, and then the weapon damage they get in tier 1. The Raiders also still win. Actually, though, we'll talk about it when the Raiders actually lose. In tier 1, they do beat the laser defense platform. The Raiders would have 1 upgrade in their pulse weapon, and they would have 1 extra or 1 research into hull and 1 research into hull repair. The Raiders do win. One of the Raiders in the tests that I ran is usually very near death, and just the turret having targeted one of its lasers at the defense or at the Raider at an inopportune time would have definitely pushed it over the top and killed it. So it was extremely low when the turret died. The first and only time that the laser defense platform does win in a 1 versus 2 is when the Advent has researched the secondary shield generators, which gives them shield burst. They need that shield burst just to stay alive, and in a 1 versus 2, the platform wins against the 2. But as soon as the Vasari goes back up to 3, they win as well. One of the key things that the Raider picks up in tier 2 when fighting is it gets the in-combat shield regen, and that's very specifically the in-combat shield regen gives you in tier 2 it will give you 1.6 shield regen and 1.8 hull regen while in combat. So while it might not seem like a lot, the just having that shield regen with 3 Raiders is usually enough to win over the top of the laser defense platform. And in the 1 versus 2, it was pretty heavily favored on the laser platform, and I would say that the Raiders got through about half of the hull, but the shield burst was definitely the MVP. And then in the 1 versus 3, the 3 Raiders absolutely knocked out the laser defense platform. I think only 1 Raider was even into hull, and the other 2 were quite healthy still. So we can actually, I'm just going to let it play in the background while we do it, just so we can see a flight pattern of how the Raiders interact. Delete that. So it's 1 turret versus the 2 Raiders. You'll see that the laser turret just has a difficulty shooting at them for some reason. It's a tracking or rotating thing where they just can't keep up. Once you get into tier 3, the Raiders, at least for the Vasari Alliance, can pick up shield burst, and that shield burst is on a 15-second cooldown and is absolutely the MVP of the Vasari in this fight. And then again, I tested again in tier 4. One of the most notable things that Advent picks up in tier 4 is this pristine structural shields, and they get to a final shield burst cooldown reduction of 45%. So these 2 in particular are nice for the Advent to pick up. However, the Raiders still win in a 1 versus 2, but instead of taking it like 2 or 3 minutes to take it down, it takes about 5 minutes to kill the single structure. Any additional Raiders that you have versus 1 turret obviously speeds it up. As you can see here, it's going quite slowly, but you'll see they're not really losing that much health, just because between the in-combat shield regen when the shield isn't gone, and then the hull regen that they get at all times, they stay pretty healthy throughout the whole fight. And then other structures that I think are important to know about is the Advent hangar structure. So I believe that those get picked up. They can get picked up in Tier 1. I did run a test where I switched the hanger defense to all fighters, and it was still Tier 4, so they're both Tier 4 because I didn't reset the any of the researches. But hanger with all fighters beats 3 raiders and loses to 4 raiders. So whatever that tells you is essentially for every hanger bay that an advent has on a gravity well you want to siege, um, you would need at least 4 of these to win, and then anything more than that, you just have to keep multiplying it by however many hangers there are. But the hanger in itself, I think, was sufficiently able to defend it. You'll notice it does take 3 military slots versus the 1 on the laser platform. And one thing I didn't test was having multiple platforms down at the same time versus the raiders. So I can actually do that while I'm talking about other matchups, just so we can check it out. So we'll do 1, 2, 3, and then raiders, we'll do 6. Just to see if the ratio holds true with other things here. I'll even slow it down a little bit. And open those up. Delete that, delete those, so we don't get any obstructions. Versus the tech, the tech light platform, I guess is what you'd call it, the light cannon platform, was substantially worse in my testing. The cannon platform itself doesn't have very good, let's find it while I'm talking about it, autocannon. So I'll put it there just so we can look at it. You'll notice this has a very similar firing angle and firing placement as to what the light frigates have. It looks like it's 5 degrees in either direction. So it has a very difficult time tracking any raiders that it's fighting against. So by itself, I just don't think that the autocannon platform is going to be as effective as the laser defense platforms will be to clear stuff out, or to clear raiders out. So I did a test of 5 autocannon platforms versus 15 raiders. There were no losses on the raiders. Also tested 2 hangar bays with the flak upgrade. I'm going to switch over to tech and then come back. So tech has the hangar bays that they can unlock in Tier 2 and the hangar flak turrets that they can upgrade into Tier 3. Unfortunately for tech, the hangar flak turrets spend a lot of time shooting at the missiles, and with their low DPS and the in-combat shield regen, plus the fighters not doing a whole lot of damage, 2 hangars with flak did not beat 10 raiders, and those 10 raiders were nearly full HP just because of lack of damage. So as far as what can beat, or what the raider needs to be defended against, I would say that ships are probably going to be better, or star bases, because star bases, there's no way a raider is chewing through a star base. But that's also a very heavy investment to defend whatever gravity well the raiders are aiming to target. I did learn some of the other things you need to learn about the raider is you need kill speeds. So the civilian building that Advent puts down, which would be I'm in the wrong faction. So if you put down a fully leveled Temple of Harmony, and you just let the raiders go unopposed at just the Temple of Harmony, it takes about 3 minutes to kill it with 5 of them. So that's one of the important structures, is if you're trying to hit research stations that they've got off planet instead of putting them on planet here and getting their points that way. The Temple of Harmony and the Temple of Hostility will take you about 3 minutes if you send 5 raiders at just that structure. Other important ones, so I'm going to skip all the extractors, and then we can kind of infer how quickly these ones go down. So you'll see that there's 4,000 shield points and 5,000 hull. I did run the Titan Foundry, which has very high durability. Every other structure from most factions has 500 or 600 durability. But I did test the Titan Foundry because that might be one of the structures that you're worried about and you would send raiders at. Raiders, it took 15 raiders about 6 minutes to kill the Titan Foundry by themselves. And just for reference, 15 raiders is about 75 supply, so it's not even that much, but it would maybe require somebody to come back and send some fleet back to protect it. So those are some of the structures that you can fight against. I did test a little bit against the Vasari platform. That one actually seemed just about as suited as the laser defense platforms do. But I made the mistake of not having another Vasari in the game, so I was unable to get the hull regeneration that the turret would receive while in combat. Things I did not test is I did not put Temples of Renewal with shield restore. I did not put the frigate or the factory repair on the structures. In my opinion, that's just too many variables. In an isolated case, though, as you can see here, we've got 6 raiders, and I'll let them keep shooting while I'm talking, just so we can see the firing patterns. But you can see here we've lost 1. I don't think that's going to make the difference. I think that these are still going to mop it up. As I was saying, the Vasari turret fared similarly to the laser defense platform, but because it's only got 1 bottom turret and then 2 side turrets that actually do a decent job of tracking. So I think that the Vasari ones will act very similar to how the Advent one does, with the exception that the Advent one will have shield burst on it and the Vasari one will not. And then to get into some of the fights that they may get into. So if we look at, if we look at some of the fights that you may get into, against the Disciple, you will beat the Disciple quite handily. Your DPS is going to be similar to what the Defensor does. You seem to have a little bit slower strafing speed compared to what the Defensor has, and I haven't read up what it is or whether or not you would win. But against the light frigates, you will definitely win just because they won't be able to target you. Acolytes should beat you. I did not test the Acolytes at all, but Acolytes with their maneuverability should keep them out of your pulse gun, and your light phase missiles don't do enough damage to really cause to really be a threat to the Acolyte. So the Acolyte does have 6 DPS. It should be able to win that one quite handily. The Tempest, I did run only supply versus supply matchups, so I think I did 50 supply versus 50 supply. And the Tempest wins in all supply matchups and wins even harder once they get into ammo redirection. Did not test the Ario drone host. I think that one's too specific to what the carrier makeup is, so I skipped it. You can definitely chase down purge vessels with the Raider instead if you're not going to shoot at structures, and you can do the same with the Guardian, because with the recent patch for 1.4, Guardians only have 200 durability now, and you can get through some of the stuff quickly. All right, well, it looks like they won, so we'll pause it. I did run the Illuminators versus the Raiders test, and I ran both in 50 supply versus 50 supply and 100 supply versus 100 supply. The Illuminators win the first shot as long as they're able to shoot that main cannon. When they're not able to shoot that main cannon, they can't do the damage with their side cannons just to win that fight. So we'll go ahead and drop a couple of them down just to throw a test in there. So we got 10, and then we'll get the Raiders back, and we'll do 20. Delete those ones and delete that so we don't have any missed targets. So that, delete that too. So 5 supply each of these, and there's 20 of them for a total of 100 supply, and I believe that the Illuminators are still 10 supply currently. So we've got 10 of them for another 100 supply, and we'll just kind of let the fight play out. So the side beams get their first volleys in. The main beams is where most of the damage comes in. And then the Raiders start going on their, because the main beams are difficult to shoot, the Raiders will circle around and they'll take them out in their angled fights. One other cruiser to make a note of is that the Subjugator for the Advent does have the ability to use their suppress skill and can suppress Raiders, although I would not say that this is the Raiders are not what you want to be suppressing. One thing to note is that the Sentinel definitely beats you, and it beats you in it wins basically 1 versus 3. You can kill 3 Raiders with just 1 Sentinel. Once you get to the 4th, it starts to become a lot closer. And I still think that the Sentinel is slightly on top, and it depends on whether or not a shield bursts go off on the Raiders or not. And then once you get to the 5th one actually has the ability to keep it a little bit close, but I still think the Sentinel is going to be better, and that's because you're in a 9 versus a 20 supply deficit at that point as the Raider user. So that's it for Advent. Give me 1 second, I was going to switch to tech. So I'm going to drop this all over here. Switch to the tech faction and put you on hold all the way out there. Let these guys keep fighting. Against the tech, you also beat the Cobalt. Both the Shuriken and the Garda do beat you quite handily. The Shuriken gets you because it has those rotating side turrets and can actually hit you with them. And then the Garda, while the damage it's going to do to you is not going to be that substantial, especially the more you progress up your defensive tree, it's still going to be enough to deter you from wanting to fight. The Stiletto, I don't think, is something that you can really fight, but it's also not going to do substantial damage to you because of the long cooldown on the missiles. So if you're fighting Raiders and Stilettos, I think you're both kind of in a losing fight, and nobody really wins, just because of the way that the fights play out. Harkas absolutely will beat you in a supply fight, and they'll beat you in most fights just because Harka turrets can track so well. So I didn't go too far down that rabbit hole just because the durability on the Harka is not something that you want to mess with. And then I did not test the Javelins. Switch back to Vasari. Not Vasari. Vasari. As you can see here, the Illuminators are actually losing here, and I've got both of them maxed on everything. There we go. For the Vasari, Raider versus Raider, it's one of those fights where nobody really wins. I did already show that I did show the firing reticle on the pulse gun. So the pulse gun really kind of wants a stationary target, and then these light phase missiles, while the targeting is actually sort of large, they have such low DPS that for the most part, in a Raider versus Raider, and assuming that you have shield regen tech active, which is down here, you're kind of not doing damage to each other. And it's a really, really boring, long fight. Defensors absolutely kick you out of the sky. It's not close. I would say that the Defensor is the biggest counter to the Raiders that the faction has. I did test in a supply versus supply of Warden versus Raider, and surprisingly, the it was an unbuffed Raider because I didn't make the call to keep two Vasari factions in the map I'm on. So I did an unbuffed Raider versus the tier 4 buffed Raider. And the Wardens did not win in a supply versus supply fight, and only started to win once you got into a count versus count fight. Wardens are now 6 supply with the most recent patch, and Raiders are 5 supply currently. So if, let's say, they send 10 Raiders at your structures, you would want 10 Wardens there to counter, which is probably fine. Wardens themselves are pretty important to keep at most times of the game, just because of all the point defense and all the missiles that you can, and all the corvettes or other things that your missiles can shoot at. So I think having extra Wardens, even if it's just to combat Raiders, is probably still a good idea. Did not test Canrack. Didn't really want to get into a long missile fight. But then the oppressors, recently nerfed in the newest hotfix, will still absolutely demolish the Raiders in a supply versus supply fight. So I would say this is your best ship for killing Raiders, followed by the Warden. Actually, I would say followed by the Defensor, and then the Warden comes in third place. And that's just because the Oppressor does such a good job with its turret tracking and the point defense on it. The Defensors can keep up speed-wise and also hit the missiles out of the air with their point defense. And then the Wardens, for some reason, their point defense just did not seem to want to get through the in-combat shield regen, which is kind of the same problem that the Illuminators are having, is they just can't deal with the shield burst. One thing I did not test was anything for the Exodus. Based on how good I noticed the shield burst being, I can't imagine that Exodus would have it any easier than what the Alliance ones are having here. So I fully expect that the Exodus fight would probably go in a slightly different direction, where you'll see some of these. They'll get their shield down. It's only 15 seconds. I do think that the upcoming hotfix that they're testing on the test server right now moves it from 15 to 20, but it's still not necessarily a bad thing. I still think that shield burst is going to remain very strong for them. Other things to talk about. As far as researches go, we'll start with Empire. There's really not much in Empire that you get a benefit from. One thing to watch out for is if you are against an Alliance player, that friendly structure damage is reduced by 48%, which is quite a lot. It basically cuts your damage in half. Phase jump charge time is good. It moves you from 8-second jump charge time to 6 seconds, so it'll help. And then phase jump speed of 180% to friendly planets is nice, but not a deal breaker. The pulse weapons. So it is one of the 2 weapons that's on the ship. If you're using it for PvP and fighting against ships, you do want the pulse weapon damage. I think that having it is a benefit to you, and I would recommend to just continue to level it up when necessary if you do plan on getting into fights. Although I think that you're probably leveling up pulse weapons kind of just with the tiers as you go, just because point defense is so important anyway. So just you're getting these as a side bonus. There's no waves, there's no beams, and then we don't get any phase missile weapon damage upgrades until tier 3. That tier 3 is only 12%, and you start at 2.7 and you max out at 3.8. So I don't think that this is the ship that you're getting any bonus missile damage for. You're probably getting it for Canrax, you're probably getting it for Desolators or Titans, things like that. So this just comes along for the ride. We don't get any bonuses from the turret servos or the precise turret servos or the heavy turret servos. Where you actually get your bread and butter for this ship is in the defensive tree. I'm going to pause it so I can go back out here. So even if you're leveling medium pulse gun damage, you'll notice it's only 200 pierce. The pulse resonance is a separate skill from the medium pulse gun. The only thing that this really shares is that it has a 3-second cooldown with the regular medium pulse gun. When you do shoot that medium pulse gun at a structure, you are doing the 5.9 DPS at 200 pierce. You are also getting the 30 on top of it with the 600 pierce, and then you'll get the light phase missile damage on top of it. But really what's more important is that you are shooting more to get the pulse resonances to hit. So you want reload for this and not necessarily damage for this, because only this plus 30 has the 600 pierce on it. Otherwise you're looking at 200 pierce versus usually 600 durability structures, and I believe that that's a 25% reduction because of the durability mismatch, which means that you're doing 1.5 DPS with this gun and you're doing like 1.2 with the light phase missile. So really this is what's doing the damage, is the pulse resonance. So the most important thing in my opinion is just making these survive longer. The longer that these can survive, the more shots you're going to get with the pulse resonance, and the more damage and resource damage you'll do to the structures and resources that you'll steal from hitting the structures. So getting the hull points, you definitely want hull regeneration in combat, and then the additional regeneration as you can. The bonus armor here is good, the turn speed is good, the acceleration is good. Shield regen in combat is also good, and the shield burst for the Alliance faction is, I would argue, the most important, but you definitely want both the shield regen in combat and the hull regen and the reverse shields if you are going against defensive structures. And then I think that's pretty much it as far as what the researches are. For synergies, you can try a couple of different ships. I think really what you're really trying to do is you're probably just sending, I guess, 10 or 20, maybe even 30 raiders at a time towards an undefended gravity wall. Let's say you know the enemy fleet is off over here. They don't have any defenses up. Or you just go past a front line of defenses and go straight for some backline stuff to hit the juicier targets. You'll probably be sending 10, 15, 20 of these at a time, and because they are fairly fast for ourselves, you're probably sending them on their own. The only thing you may send them with would maybe be the siege ship. You might, and this is a very strong might, you might send a fabricator somewhere to build raiders out of this. Or you could bring the fabricator with your main fleet, and once you've chased away an enemy fleet out of a gravity well, then you build a handful of them to hit, I don't know, maybe 10 structures that are over here to steal some resources while you hit it. What is unique with this ship is that the metal and crystal salvaged is salvaged at the point of doing damage to the structure, whereas the fabricator, if you have debris reclamation, this has to be, the unit that you're stealing this from has to be destroyed. So if you brought this into the gravity well and you're doing some damage to a structure, you'll get it while the raiders are shooting. You'll not get anything from the fabricator until you blow it up. So those would be the only real synergies I can see with any of the subcaps. And then again, also with the capitals, you're probably also not really sending capitals with these either. You might send it with a Volcaros Desolator or something that can siege a planet that also has the bonus damage to structures. But for the most part, what you're using these raiders for is to kill the structures, and maybe the Desolator kills off the planet with the siege turrets as well. So that would be really the only synergy. Otherwise, you might bring. I can't think of any other capital ships you'd want to bring other than that one to kill a planet faster. We didn't talk about phase resonance. Mobility would be good. I would say that the phase jump speed actually is. This is the only ship where having extra phase jump speed might be super beneficial, just because what you're probably doing with these ships, and I've tested this a couple times, is let's say you wanted to try to rush them. You'll notice how far the enemy is. The enemy is all the way over here, and I've tried it before where you're building your raiders probably as your third ship. And one of the things I actually realized I forgot to mention is costs and build time. So they do take 22 seconds to build. With the Alliance, we do get a very small culture buff of 6%. You're only knocking off like 1.2 seconds off of the build time with this first point. And then let's say you get to 24 here, you knock it from 22 seconds to like 19 or 18 seconds. So still builds quite long. And then for cost, I think they're pretty much even on metal and let's get in here. Oh, wrong one. Is this it? No, this one. And then planets. Cost. 75 metal and 45 crystal. 45 crystals actually quite a bit. You could, just early on the homeworld, you could support constant raider production from the homeworld just on the 2 crystal that we get as the home planet income, but you would not be able to support it, or actually you would be able to support it on the metal. So you could support one factory, one nano assembly factory, building one raider basically on cooldown with the factory, but you wouldn't be able to support 2, only one at a time. And then otherwise, the phase resonance, I think we talked about it. Mobility is good. Combat is actually the best one for this, for the reason that you want that reload speed. Reload speed, more reload speeds gets you more pulse resonances. And with a 3-second cooldown, let's say you take 15 seconds, let's say it would be 15% off. So quick math, 3, to be about 6.9. Actually, I don't even know what that would be. 0.45 off. So you take from 3 to basically 2.5, 2.55 seconds of cooldown if you can get into the max reload. So if you're somewhere in between, it's either 3 seconds or 2.5 seconds. 2.5 being the best you can do. So yeah, I would say that that's what it is. But I was commenting, like, let's say you decided to build a Raider Rush and the enemy homeworld is, we'll say, 6 planets away. If you haven't cleared gravity wells, you can't really, I mean, you can fly them through, but you're going to take some significant damage from both missile frigates and any flak frigates that get through there, as well as heavy cruisers. So I have tried it a couple times where I'll do 2 nano assemblies really quickly while I'm colonizing one direction, and then building like 15 or 20 raiders early just to see what I can do. And what usually happens is you start them here. You have to wait for all 20 of them to build before you can go and do anything. And the reason being is because if you slowly trickle one by one, what happens is your fleet will jump in, the enemy ships start to congregate over here towards that one, it gets over here to jump, the next one comes in, and then their ships are already congregated here, so this next one has to fly past them all as it's getting ready to jump. So you can't build them, you can't trickle build them, you have to build them all in one fell swoop and then warp them together. Otherwise, you start losing a significant number of them as they're trying to traverse over to here. Plus, then what they're doing is they're going to wait in a gravity well that is usually occupied by a ship. The best case is you end up in a gravity well with an asteroid, and you can kill the light frigate because it can't hit you. But either way, it's not ideal that you're traversing usually dangerous gravity wells. Like this one would be fairly dangerous for you to get across, and you'd probably lose a couple. So if you start with 20, you probably get over here with 17 left if you're still tier 1. So you have to be careful when and where you use them. I would still say the best case scenario is, let's say the enemy's fleet is positioned here. You can fly around here. You can hit some structures back here that are lightly defended or undefended. Or even if this has a significant number, of, let's say, turrets or hangars here, the further into the defensive tree that you are, the more likely you can just skip right through them and go to the back lines. As you can see here, against the Illuminators, we've lost a single Raider, and the rest of these are half shield and full hull, which I know that they're tier 4. I know that I have all of the defenses at this point, but this is kind of their moment to shine, is that they can get through stuff while they're doing it. So this is kind of like the sneak ships, the stealth ships, the ones you want to throw where nobody's looking or where defenses are light, things like that, to kill buildings for your opponent, to steal resources from them, to set them behind on research, to set them behind on buildings. Maybe you have to sneak it in to kill some culture hub or something, or you have to sneak in and kill a production facility. Just know that you'll need at least a minute or two, depending on how many you've got, to kill the structure, and then just it helps knock them out that much quicker. So that's all I've got. Again, it's one of those ships that causes you to micro harder. There is a micro tax assigned with these. I think that it's worthwhile for the micro tax that you have to pay. So I highly recommend that we start increasing the use as Vasari on how to use these ships. You do have to be careful, though. I would say early. We do have a 50 supply increase over our opponents at this point. Here, I think it's 100 bonus, but then they get to 900 before we can get, or they get to like 800 or 850 before we can get to our 900. So I would say maybe if you can find a way to squeeze 10 in here, or find a way to keep those 10 going in here, just to nuke down any structures that you can sneak them behind to fight, then I think that they're definitely something that is currently underutilized and could be used better. So that's what I've got for the Tosurak Raider. Let me know comments in the description below, and hopefully the next video is not as long as this one. Thanks.